Are You Nuts? A Tom and Scott Mystery, Book 7. Author Mark Richard Zubro. St. Martin's Press, New York. Eric Aust, narrator. Chapter 10. Lydia was in her tent jeans, but had added a tent blouse over her mounds of flesh. We sat in Edwina's office. Lydia rested her bulk in the comfy leather chair behind the desk. Lydia said, "There's all kinds of rumors running through town." I nodded. "Well, you tell me what happened," she asked. "If you wanted information, why didn't you just ask Carolyn?" "Carolyn is an employee, like you. You're the one who's directly involved." "Is this a hostile conversation or any kind of investigation?" "My lawyer is right outside." No, that's not necessary." "Mrs. Marquez, I don't mean to be rude, but what is this all about?" "I wanted to talk to you. We've been on opposite sides, and we've never really spoken with each other." "All you had to do is come talk to me. The only remote contact we've had is because of the race for school board. I just worked with the union in the election campaign. Against me and my friends." "Yes." "That you're right, but I was dissatisfied with our chat in the hall. We may never be friends, but I'd like to reach a point of benign neutrality. Besides, you're famous. I don't know anybody else who's been on Oprah." She had chosen this moment to be a star chaser groupie. "I didn't think so." "Have you talked to the school board's lawyer?" I asked. "Does she know you're talking to me?" "Why do I need to consult with the board's lawyer to talk to someone?" "I would have if I were a board member, but she hadn't asked for my advice." "Mrs. Marquez, what do you want to talk to me about?" "I'm concerned about the district." "Aren't we all?" "I'm in a position of grave responsibility. I think we could work together to help resolve this situation. I understand you've been questioning people about what happened." "Yes." She leaned forward in her chair. "I'd be willing to trade information." "I won't make any unconditional promises." "May I be honest with you?" "What was I going to say?" "No, lie to me." "I'm frozen out by most of the other board members. My agenda for change in the schools is not going to happen as long as I always get voted against 6-1. I am a practical woman. I'd like to move beyond that." I wondered what that meant and what it had to do with me. "I know you think I'm evil incarnate." "I couldn't argue with that," she continued. "I'd like to have at least a working relationship with you. I think you still have a lot of say in the union, and this mess with Jerome and Meg Swarthmore has me upset." "How so?" I was surprised to hear my own question. She drummed her fingers on the desk for several moments. Finally she said, "I wish things were different. I used to be certain of everything. At one time, I was very close to Jerome. His death has upset me." "You were close?" "When he first started teaching in the district, he came to my church. But there were feuds among various factions. He left and joined another congregation. Jerome was always kind to me. He reached out to me in some difficult times. Early in my marriage, I was sorry when his faction split from ours." "You couldn't stay friends outside of church?" "Either you believe or you don't. Those were the options at the time. I've learned some since then. Too often we've been too rigid. I still believe, but I think our tactics have to be professional and sensible. Always screaming at the top of our lungs is not the way to get people elected. My confrontation with you in the hall was inexcusable. I apologize." "I appreciate that, but I don't understand. If you want to change tactics, how come you caused trouble at the PTA meeting?" "You weren't there. If you had been, you would have seen two factions. Belutha going out of control almost lost us the election. We should have won that election by at least 20 votes. I'd counted carefully. I or my friends knew who was there and who we could count on. Now, with Jerome's death, I'm worried." "About what?" "Belutha might have had something to do with the murder." I sat there stunned. For several moments, it wasn't that I believed Belutha was inherently innocent. I said, "You're turning in your friend?" "I don't know what to think. She's been more of an ally I had to put up with than a friend. My faction of the church is not as radical. Has more class than Belutha's. She made some wild threats. She's not a help to us as a raving loony or as a killer." "And the attendant bad publicity?" She had the grace to smile and nod. "Yes." "But you all three agreed on the same agenda?" "Usually I was part of the meeting that encouraged Jerome to run for union president. But I heard he was in favor of equal rights for gay people. Never. He knew about you and your activity in the union. He simply never said anything either way. It was sneaky, but no one ever asked him directly. That's kind of mean. He loved being secretive, and he was determined to win. I was willing to help him. Was he really going to change things if he got elected? Everything he could. He was determined to reverse all the liberal concessions the union had won in the last few years. The union leadership is far more liberal than its members. He was going to speak out for the majority of teachers. You're wrong about that. You know, I realize that is conventional wisdom among some politicians, but membership is not clamoring for elected officials to take away their rights. We'll see. But I didn't come here to discuss politics. No. Belutha was out of control. Every time we met, Jerome and Belutha fought. What did they fight about? Almost anything. For example, Belutha wanted Jerome to put out position papers like that Seth was doing. Seth was a true believer, but in his little causes, not in ours. He wasn't in your faction? No. He isn't in our churches. I don't know him at all. He had no hidden agenda? Not that I'm aware of. Belutha was out of control. She made threats. She wanted to picket, boycott, go to every meeting and disrupt the proceedings. She had to be slapped down more than a few times by others in several public forums. Jerome was one of the ones who didn't like the way Belutha handled herself. But Jerome was out of control at the PTA meeting. Remember, Belutha had to be let out. Jerome took Meg aside. I must say your friend was not a picture of calm reserve. I don't get that last statement. You people sit back and say the most dreadful things, make the most outlandish accusations, and then you try to claim the morally superior high ground if somebody dares to disagree with you? That may be, but I thought we'd agreed to help each other here. Why don't you tell the police what you know? Because then I'm involved. I'd have to give statements to them. If I get drawn in as a school board member, it might look bad for the district. And for yourself, I thought. I said, I could just tell the police what you told me. But we are the only ones here for this conversation. Deniability is a concept that works for me. There's got to be a reason you're telling me this. You didn't develop a sudden urge to be friends with Meg or me. No. To put it simply, by helping you, I may be able to help myself. If it turns out Belutha is somehow involved, then my life is easier. I don't have to deal with her. I'm sure she'd love to hear that. How do you know I won't simply run over to her house and blurt out what you told me? I know you want to free your friend. You'll follow the truth wherever it will lead you. I know that you're at least on the periphery of the investigation. If Belutha isn't guilty, I have lost nothing. If she is, I have gained a great deal. If I hadn't talked to Agnes and Stephanie earlier, I wouldn't have believed any of this. Even with that knowledge, I wasn't close to buying her whole story, but she was right. If this was information that took suspicion away from Meg and me, great. Of course, she could also be trying to divert attention away from herself. A distinct possibility. She said, I've given you some information. Will you in turn share with me? I wasn't about to give her anything incriminating. I gave her a scanty outline of the presence of the bloody book. She said, so, the police have 2 books with different fingerprints. What does that mean? I don't know. I guess I was more thinking out loud. Maybe I was wrong, but I thought there was a sudden gleam in her eye. She just thought of something, or whatever I'd said had started a train of reasoning she wasn't about to divulge, or her contact lens had caught the light just right. No. She nodded several times, seemed satisfied with what I'd said, then she left. I called Scott and told him I would be home in about an hour and would give him the whole story when I arrived. I looked up Belutha's address on the district master list in the office. Todd walked me out to my car, and I filled him in on Lydia's revelations. What are you going to do? He asked. I'm not going to the cops. That's useless. It's third-hand hearsay or something. It's not hard evidence. That too. I'm going to Belutha's, and I'm going to tattle. He smiled. You're going to destroy your budding friendship with Lydia. She took a chance. She lost. I'll call you if necessary. If there are any developments with Meg, let me know. I unlocked my black pickup truck with its oversized wheels, shining black metallic exterior and black leather interior. I call it the Butchmobile. Wishful thinking. When I turned the motor on, the radio blared enough to hurt my eardrums. Someone had turned the volume up to full blast. I snapped it off. I put the window down and listened to the neighborhood noise. I heard the roar of a motorcycle. When that faded, I listened to kids calling to each other. Children on bikes were riding around on the tennis courts. In the near distance, I saw the arc lights around the community baseball field. For ages, Scott had been after me to get an alarm system installed in the truck. I had informed him that it was silly. I had been told people could get around an alarm system almost as easily as breaking into the car. Scott had informed me that I had been told wrong. I hadn't listened to him, and now I wished I had. This had to be more harassment. By whom? And what for? Wasn't there enough already? Unless this was not done by the murderer, or done before all of today's other incidents, or without the knowledge of them. Sitting aimlessly in the parking lot wasn't going to help. There was nothing I could do at that moment about whoever was harassing me, so I drove to Belutha's. She lived 3 blocks from Agnes. Her old Victorian home had 1 turret and a bay window, but was not overly endowed with gingerbread. Lights were on in the ground floor. Through a front window, I saw a large screen television. On it, a fat-faced preacher with a self-satisfied smile waved his arms. I knocked at the door. A child of about 5 answered. I asked to speak to Miss Muffin. "Mom!" the kid yelled and disappeared. I'd never met Belutha. A moment later, a moose of a woman appeared behind the screen. Belutha Muffin had the weight, but not the height, to be a lineman for a professional football team. She filled the doorway in a pale pink muumuu. Using the same comparison, Lydia might have the heft for a linebacker on a college team. I introduced myself. "I know who you are. I'd like to talk to you. Coming here to plead for your job will do you no good." "I beg your pardon. That isn't why you're here." Whatever lurid scenarios had gone through her mind, I couldn't be sure. Dramatic confessions on my part? Repentance? "No. I have some information that I think might be useful to you. May I come in?" She looked uncertain, but I'd showed up unexpectedly and caught her off guard. She hadn't had a chance to check her Bible and find the correct behavior for what to do when the faggot shows up on your doorstep. "What information?" "Lydia Marquez came to talk to me. She tried to implicate you in the murder of Jerome Blenkinsop. I figured I'd start out with the big bomb and work down." "I don't believe you. Lydia wouldn't and didn't." "Would you like me to go to the police with what she said instead of talking to you?" "If Lydia knows something, why didn't she go to the police?" "The same question I'd asked. Right now, it's at the gossip stage, not the hard evidence stage. Do you think she should be going around telling people nasty stuff about you?" "What did she say?" "Gossip about yourself, good or bad. Who could resist?" I was directed into the front room. What little I saw of the house was neat and clean. A God Bless Our Home sampler and a picture of the Nativity were the only wall decorations. The room I was in had plastic covers on the couch and chairs. "The children are still little. We don't want them to spill on the good furniture." She was apologizing for her housekeeping, something I never did. The couch cushions squished as I sat down on them. She asked, "What did Lydia say?" "She said you and Jerome had fights, that you were out of control. If you were implicated in Jerome's murder, it would remove a thorn from her side and that of your organization. She also said that you had no class and that she didn't like your tactics." Belutha's face was very, very red before I was even halfway through with this recitation. "She didn't." I suppose she could deny saying those things. She and I were the only two in the room. She gave me a look of distaste. "You're making things up." Carolyn Blackburn saw me go into the office with her Lydia told me that Jerome had promised to go after all the liberal rules the union had won in the last few contracts. She told you? That was the plan. Yes, she did tell you. She did talk to you. How dare she speak to you? I think she doesn't like you. Well, I always tried to like her. I suppose I could handle being enemies. She'll be sorry. Great. I cared if it cleared me or Meg of any suspicion. She said the fights were pretty serious. Lydia doesn't know what she's talking about. I met with Jerome secretly. He was on my side. People are afraid of Lydia. She's got a sharp tongue and a lot of friends. If I wasn't a Christian woman, I'd have said some hateful things about her. More and better. When did you meet with Jerome? Just before the PTA meeting. It was mostly about religious and family things. He was going to come back to my church. He was tired of the backbiting ways at his new place. I offered to help him get into some of the committees in the church. That doesn't sound murderous. Let me tell you a thing or two. We worked so hard in the last election, we lost those 3 school board offices by less than a total of 200 votes. If we could have done just a bit more, we could have taken control. Lydia kept poo-pooing my ideals. Everything I said was wrong. She thought whatever she said was wisdom straight out of the Bible. It wasn't. Not hardly. She kept trying to squeeze my friends out of things. She wanted to take over the school board and be its president. Didn't you? The plan was for all of us to get elected. After we won, there was plenty of time to decide who got what. But only she won. And I won the PTA election. We're making progress. After the school board election, we weren't discouraged. We still had our causes to fight for. We went ahead with the fight for the presidency of the PTA. This special union election gave us another chance. There's a lot of anger in the community about the teachers' union. Those settlements in the last few years have been outrageous. There are some teachers in this district making more than $50,000 a year. I thought of numerous responses to that balderdash, but I wanted to get her back on track. What happened at the PTA meeting? Your friend, Meg. Yes, I know she's your friend. Did what she's always done to me. She tried to shut me out. She made fun of me and my beliefs. I'm afraid I got out of control. I was so glad that Jerome told her what for. Were you there, or did you talk to Jerome after he spoke with Meg? I spoke briefly with him afterward. He was very kind and helpful, a true friend. He couldn't talk to me long enough. He said he had to meet with more people. Did you tell the police this? Yes. Did you know who? No. If he had told me, we'd know the killer. Where'd you go when you left the meeting? I went to the teacher's lounge to lie down. I turned off the lights. Did you see anything else? I saw that Beatrix Zori still trying to buttonhole people. Beatrix had told me she went shopping. Belutha continued. Is that woman insane? Does she do anything else besides find fault? You noticed. While I was running for school board, she would call me and complain and ask if I got elected. Would I fix this, that, or the other thing? She was constantly harping. She wanted a change in the school board so we could take care of her personal needs. I couldn't afford to alienate her. She's got a big mouth around town. She supported us. Traitor Beatrix. At the endorsement meeting, no one, including Beatrix, had spoken against any of the union's choices. The vote on whom to endorse was unanimous. I remember Beatrix sitting near me with a fatuous smile on her face. A child came in wearing pajamas and kissed Belutha good night. She gave her a hug and a kiss and promised to be up in a minute to tuck her in. I could barely hear the television in this mostly quiet house. Thankfully, they had air conditioned it. Belutha said, I saw Beatrix talking to one of those new teachers. A blonde young man, Trevor or something. They seemed to be arguing. I couldn't hear what it was about. I didn't tell the police about that. Should I have? As far as I could tell, it had nothing to do with Jerome. It probably wasn't important, is what I said, but I wasn't so sure about that. I'd have to talk to our Beatrix and our Trevor. If that's who it was, the picture of Beatrix as a lying sack of shit appealed to me. Trevor as a total asshole worked for me as well. Of course, if he was arguing with Beatrix, he couldn't be all bad. I asked, "What did you do?" When I felt better, I got up. I was still a little weak. That almost took a physical and emotional toll on me. I'm on several different medicines from my doctor. "Did you see anything as you left?" "I didn't even vote. I left by one of the side doors. I passed Meg on her way down the hall." "When was this?" "I said on my way out. I ignored her. She wasn't on the way to the library. I saw Jerome after that. He was coming back from the wing with the math department offices. He was alive when I left. Meg had taken a journey outside the room that I hadn't known about. And what was Jerome doing down in the math offices? Simply stopping in his classroom or picking up something in the office he forgot or trysting with a murderer?" "You didn't see Jerome and Meg together?" "No, they were going in opposite directions. It bothered me that Meg hadn't added this to what she had told Agnes. Or had Agnes simply forgotten it? Or left it out deliberately? Or did Meg have something to cover up? I wanted to speak with her. Before the murder, we'd have been comparing notes and making cracks about all the people involved. Now, I'd be happy to comfort her and help her out. I needed a face-to-face meeting with her." But Luther continued. "I talked with Jerome for another second or two. He'd been to his mailbox and found a note from that Seth person. Jerome was really angry that Seth had put out such a thing. I don't remember Jerome's name being mentioned. It wasn't. He was afraid it was going to make Seth successful, that people would believe and trust Seth and not Jerome. He wanted to write something against it or something more harsh. He wanted me to begin planning to have another meeting to write it up." "He didn't write his own propaganda?" "Oh, my, no. We would get together to decide strategy. I shouldn't tell you any more about that." "You've been helpful." I got up to leave. She showed me out with some graciousness. She added at the end, "I'm going to be on the phone about Lydia tonight. She can't say those kinds of things." Instead of turning on the air conditioning in the truck, I left the windows open. A mild sheen of sweat formed on me as I hurried through the Midwestern humidity. I smelled rain on the wind. I hoped it would make it cooler. At home, I found Scott curled in his favorite armchair. He was watching the Weather Channel on cable television. If he's depressed, he can sit there for hours, enthralled by the charts, graphs, and occasional inadvertent hilarity of live television. "Sorry I'm late. There's cold pizza. You want me to microwave it for you? I made a salad, or you could nuke some vegetables." He ate a salad while I had a late dinner. "You okay?" I asked. I watched him carefully. He was wearing white gym socks and his oldest high school gym shorts. He'd sewn them and patched them numerous times. He wore his working on the car t-shirt. It never came completely clean in the wash anymore. It had interesting patterns of old stains. It also clung tightly to the muscles on his upper arms and showed his flat stomach to great advantage. "I'm feeling a little better," he said. "I spent most of the day canceling engagements. Biff is not happy with me." His agent had some long, boring, preppy name. Scott just referred to him as Biff. "Are you happy with you?" I asked. "Yeah, I guess." As I erased each thing from my calendar, I felt better. I'm keeping only those engagements where I agreed to do a charity appearance. Most of those are AIDS-related anyway. A huge number of Scott's promotional appearances in the past few months had been for helping other gay people, gay health groups, gay hospices. If it was gay and they needed help, they called Scott. He continued. "I cut back on some of those too. I want time to myself. I need to enjoy the first September I've had off since 4th grade. I'm worried about you. I'm also having a little cognitive dissonance. We've been fucking like bunnies since you've been back. I bet you're upset about being gay." "Is that cognitive dissonance stuff catchy?" He felt my forehead. "You don't have a fever and you don't look cognitive or dissonant." "I think you're better." "I'm still a little down, but I'm pulling it together. My comment came from a mixture of depression and being overtired, and a wish that everything could be easier and simpler. I know who I am, and I'm happy about it. I'm as normal as I want to be. I mentioned Kurt's comment about being an unhappy gay person. Scott laughed. People are more used to dying and depressed gay people from all that shit on television. They're going to be disappointed if they do a film on my life. Good. He asked me about the investigation, and I filled him in. I finished. I'm worried about the union election. You get wrapped up in things. Whose side is winning and losing? I've seen you on election nights, flipping between every network and cable television station. You are obsessed with this stuff. Are you sure that's good? Isn't it important who wins the union election in my school? Why would it be? How's it going to hurt you if Seth wins? You're the man whose union is making huge headlines about a strike. It makes a difference if there's a moronic fool running things. I think it's important to prevent that. People invest a lot of emotion in what directly affects their lives. Look at the passion that was involved in the simple PTA election that started all of this. According to what I've learned, a lot of that began many years ago. He nodded. You're right. The guys on the team get nuts about the union. Nobody stands out as a major suspect yet, I said. That Bjorn guy, the part-time teacher, strikes me as a dangerous. It's always good to have a militia member hanging around the woodwork as a murder suspect. Bjorn strikes me as mildly nuts, but he doesn't rate too highly as a killer. Lydia? Lydia or Belutha work equally well for me, but I don't see major motivation for murder there. How about Beatrix? Oh, if I could pin the murder on her, I would be delighted. Or Meg? Possible, but not probable. Maybe you need to look deeper into motivation. I need to look deeper into everything. Snuggled together on the living room couch, we watched our tape of the movie Beautiful Thing, something that often helps cheer me up. At 1 a.m, it began to rain lightly. When we got to bed, he pulled me close and rested his head on my chest. He rearranged my chest hair with his chin so it wouldn't tickle his nose. I put my arms around him and he sighed contentedly. I stroked his back and his shoulders gently and easily. I was still worn out from lack of sleep. I was not looking forward to being up in a few hours to go to school. I thought he'd fallen asleep when he murmured, I love you, Tommy. Most everybody just calls me Tom. My mother, when she was irritated with me when I was a kid, would call me Thomas. Still does. I don't usually like being called Tommy, but when Scott does it with the deep thrum in his voice with that latent southern drawl behind it, I just melt. We don't call each other pet names often, but that's his for me in his most emotional and tender moments. I said, I love you. I felt his body relax, and knew shortly after that he had truly fallen asleep. He seldom nods off, all nestled around me, and I usually find it difficult to fall asleep that way as well, but I didn't care that night. I held and caressed the man I loved for a long time. It was quite a while before I dozed off. I woke around 6. Scott was still asleep. I noted the tousled hair, the rise and fall of his chest, the occasional murmur or twitch. I still loved watching him sleep. Finally, I got up and looked outside. A light rain switching to mist continued to fall. I decided to get in a morning workout. Tomorrow was Friday, and we would have students all day. Today was a teacher's institute at the new school. The people I wanted to talk to would all be present. I thought of calling Meg. I decided to wait and see if Georgette had talked to her. Maybe Georgette would have an insight I had missed. I had been clinking with the weights for about 15 minutes when Scott joined me in silence. He did his stretching exercises. He whirled sweat clothes, shrunken from many washings, to where they clung to various muscle groups on our bodies. We spotted each other as we lifted and groaned about halfway through the workout. His crotch brushed against my knee as I was doing a leg lift. I stopped, and he moved closer. He brushed the sweat from his eyes. Sweaty sex with that man is just about the best. A few intense and fierce minutes passed. I was in the shower when he came into the bathroom. I thought he was going to shave. He pulled the door slightly open. You were talking about a Belutha muffin last night? I stopped shampooing my hair. Yeah, I talked with her at her house last night. She's one of the pains in the asses of the opposition. Not anymore, she's not. She's dead. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.